Since the video last night, I made one important change to the E1, and I kept the stock front springs and shocks, and I replaced the left side rear shock with a stock one. And what that does is it will limit the torque rise when it's trying to climb steeply, because the drive shaft, the top of the drive shaft, turns towards the left rear tire, and it's the one that wants to, the equal and opposite reaction wants to twist the suspension this way. Well, by limiting the amount of travel that it has there, it will now just basically compress this one instead of raising the left side completely. The other thing, during side hilling, anytime you're under power, you do have some torque twist happening, and that is limited by the drive shaft as well as the spring. Now it can still lean this way a long ways, but what this allows it to do is keep one drive tire on the ground longer over obstacles, but it limits the amount of twist, and it also limits the torque rise that you'll get during a steep climb, and it really made a difference. So I think the good setup on these is probably just one extended shock on the right rear, and that will preserve your side hilling, it will preserve your climbing, it will preserve your torque rise during the steep climbs, and limit the torque twist. So I'll just run it up the hill a few times and just show you what it can do now. One thing you'll see as this thing starts up the hill is it still leans a little bit to the left, but not like it did. It's climbing much flatter now than it did yesterday. The wheel's not nearly as high in the air, and we're approaching the traction limit of the tire now, and it's not flipping like it did just last night. You can hear those tires slip. Still climbs even though they're slipping a little bit. So we'll steepen it up a little more. This is a good thing. We're traction limited and not center of gravity limited. Last night it would flip over because the tires had more grip than the chassis could use. Today that is not the case. The chassis can handle that extra bit. Let's run the MoFo RC up the same incline. Now this time the MoFo RC has a little bit more tire lift just due to that extra suspension, but I feel like it can handle it because everything is mounted just a little bit lower, and it actually just made a full pull all the way to the top and hung its wheels. Full pull. So they can both do it now. They're both almost identical on the ability to climb. Just a minor edge to the MoFo. My bouncer's just a little bit lower CG, even with the ability to flex on all four wheels. Last thing I'll do in this video is weigh them. That might be the difference here. I had it and then I got greedy at the end and tried to just gun it over. I won't get greedy this time. There it goes. And putting them on the scale, MoFo RC comes in at 302, and you can see what I've done as far as brass goes. RC four-wheel drive stamped steel wheels and stock motor. this one has the 13 gram front diff cover and skid plate. It's got no weights in the back and at all. It's just stock setup other than the kinetic shock. I've got a heat sink and wheel weights up front. So it is significantly heavier. It does have a barrage motor, but I hadn't anticipated it being that much heavier. And I think that is probably the main difference between the two as far as performance goes. Basically 302 to 359, so it's a 57 gram difference between the two. The takeaway from this video is what wins in a Flex Friday picture contest doesn't always work on a rock, and especially when you start climbing. Big articulation just kills your climb performance, and the ones to really worry about are on the left side of the car, the left rear. If you can limit that travel, the up travel of the left rear, it's going to dramatically improve the climbing ability. Also, if you can keep the front end from rising dramatically, with double barrel shocks, it'll just send that thing in the air and throw the CG off. And I don't know which one is worse to have, the back rise or the front rise, but the flatter this thing can stay during a climb, the better it's going to be. And big articulation, like we said, looks really cool on Flex Friday pictures, but it's really not that great when you're trying to compete. And the main difference in climbing in these now is just the E1 is heavier, and it's probably, I was thinking about why it would be heavier, and it is probably due to the barrage motor and the trail wheels. That's all I can think of, because it's only a 4 gram difference between the two front diff covers, but that's the only thing I can think of. They can both do the same things, they can both go in the same lines. I do think that subjectively this is still the clear winner. The Flex blades do a nice job of controlling everything. It gives you articulation without sacrificing that firm planted feel as it's going over things. I like them both, and for a while I had the E1 torn down, and I think that was a mistake. I think I prejudged it based on my own ignorance at the time, thinking that 55 quarters worth of flex on these wheels was the ticket, and in fact it just was killing the climb performance of it. The single kinetic in the back is good because it allows that rear tire to reach down to rocks and provide a little bit of forward movement over larger peaks. And it's another way to do the same thing that this one is doing by allowing a little more on all 4 tires. They're both good. I love them both. They're both cool trucks. They're both here to stay. And hope you're enjoying the videos. We'll talk to you later.